compare the post-operative activity, anterior chamber cellular activity in group A patients that were treated with enoxaparin sodium. On the day first, 83% of the patients had only occasional activity, mild flare or reaction, whereas on seventh day, 100 of the patients were activity free. In the group B, on first day, 93% of the patients had grade 3 cellular activity. So we started them on topical steroids, and on seventh day of examination, 96% of the patients had reduced to occasional visual acuity. After 3 months follow-up, the visual acuity was comparable, that is negligible in both cases. So, as a conclusion, we found out that the use of enoxaparin sodium while we are doing a complex procedure like a combined procedure of phacoemulsification with removal of silicone oil, we achieved reduced post-op inflammation, improved visual acuity, and reduced post-operative reactions. That was the conclusion of our study. So, thank you very much. The house is open for discussion. So basically, enoxaparin sodium is basically it's a heparin class of drug. So its main function is to act as an anticoagulant, but we also use it for its anti-inflammatory activity. This was the main purpose of our study, to see whether enoxaparin sodium reduces the post-op inflammation after complex retinal surgical procedures or not. So this was the rationale of the study.
So how many percentage of patients did you give this injection? 50%?
Yes, sir. Total, there were 60 patients that were included in the study. So we randomly divided into two groups. One group had 30 patients. They were given enoxaparin sodium, and the other group also had 30 patients. They were not given this intervention.
Okay, and was it significant?
Yes, sir. It was very significant. Based on the study results, it was very significant.
Any other question from the...
Sir, I don't know about that. See. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I call upon Dr. Anika Kamal for central retinal artery occlusion as a rare manifestation of rheumatoid heart disease in a young female patient.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Anika Kamal, second year resident, Mughalai Hospital, Lahore. My topic is the hidden connection unraveling the deadly dupe between central retinal artery occlusion and rheumatic heart disease. A 30-year-old female, unmarried, a resident of Nankana Sahib, presented to us in OPD on 4th of July 2024 with a presenting complaint of sudden loss of vision in left eye for 3 days. She experienced loss of vision in left eye, which was sudden in onset, not associated with any pain, headache, or nausea. She had multiple episodes of painless transient loss of vision in left eye, and the last episode was 2 days ago. There was no associated floaters, flashes, or photophobia. She had dyspnea while doing house chores for the past 8 years, and other cardiac symptoms were absent. She was non-diabetic and non-hypertensive. Ocular history, systemic history, and the past history was unremarkable. Patient has a stable vital. Ocular examination was normal in right eye, but in the left eye, visual acuity was hand movement, and the patient had positive RAPD. Anterior segment examination was unremarkable in both eyes, except left pupil was non-reactive to light. Fundus examination of the right eye was normal, and the left eye showed pale striated spot at macula, pale retina with attenuated vasculature, and sparing of papillomacular bundle. So we made a probable diagnosis of central retinal artery occlusion with sparing of cilioretinal artery. To find the cause of cilioretinal artery in our patient, we did the following investigations. Systemic blood investigation was normal in our patient, and ECG echocardiography of the patient confirmed the diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease with moderate aortic and mitral regurgitation. As it is a life-threatening condition, we did the neurological workup of the patient to rule out any infarction, and the CT and MRI brain of the patient was non-significant. Central retinal artery occlusion is an ocular emergency, and incidence of central retinal artery occlusion is about 1 to 2 in 100,000 people. It is more common in males, and the average is 60 to 65. It is very uncommon in younger population, younger than 40 years of age. Rheumatic heart disease causes inflammation and fibrosis of the mitral valve, which leads to the left atrial dilatation and increased wall stress. predisposes to the atrial fibrillation and left atrial clot formation and systemic embolism. Literature review revealed that there are only few sporadic cases has been reported where rheumatic heart disease being the cause of central retinal artery occlusion in younger population. Only 2 major case series have been reported in patients younger than 40 years. And this was the case reported in the Western population where they see that rheumatic heart disease is a rare cause of central retinal artery occlusion in younger patients. A case was reported in the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology in 2022 where a patient 37-year-old presented with sudden loss of vision in left eye. When they dig into the history, examination, and the detailed investigation, they found out that the patient had rheumatic heart disease with multiple valve involvement, which become the cause of central retinal artery occlusion in that patient. Another study was published in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, where they studied the systemic association in Indian population with central retinal artery occlusion in younger people. They concluded that the central retinal artery occlusion in younger population has a multifactorial cause, and the major one is the hypercoagulable state. And the rheumatic heart disease or the other causes are the uncommon association of retinal artery occlusion in younger patients. So conclusion is rheumatic heart disease is a rare etiology of central retinal artery occlusion in young patient. Any patient who came with central retinal artery occlusion should be looked for underlying cause and dealt accordingly. So the take-home message is an eye is a window to heart. So the early diagnosis and management are very crucial to save patient's life and vision. Patient with ocular pathologies should be assessed for systemic associations to prevent life-threatening complications. Thank you. Any questions?
Can I have this? What are the other causes of CRAO beside what are the rare causes beside this rheumatoid arthritis?
Sir, in younger population, younger than 40 years, the most common is hypocoagulable state, which can be due to hyperhomocystinemia or antiphospholipid syndrome, hypercholesterolemia, hyperlipidemia. In young females, then pregnancy or contraceptive drugs, they can lead to central retinal artery occlusion. Or cardiovascular events are rare in young population.
Any question from you?
Yes, it is partially reversible if patient present within first 4 hours of the presentation, and the injury become irreversible after 6 hours. So if the patient presented us after urgently in the operate emergency with the vision loss, the vision can be partially reversible with the management of the CRA. If the patient presented immediately or within 4 hours, we can reverse. We can give the following management like ocular massage with a 3D contact lens to dislocate the emboli. The second one, we can do anterior chamber paracentesis. The third one is rebreathing in a plastic bag, which increases the carbon dioxide level and causes metabolic acidosis, which causes vasodilation. We can give topical AGTs like apraclonidine 1% or timolol 0.5%, and intravenous acetazolamide. And the other systemic or the other are like embolysis, thrombolysis, or transluminal embolectomy with anti-YAG laser. And the chronic management includes antiplatelet therapy.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I call upon Dr. Aiza Nadeem Bhatt for her presentation on lifting the curtain.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Aiza Nadeem Bhatt, third year postgraduate resident at Mughalai Hospital Trust, and today I will be presenting Lifting the Curtain. So my case is about a 5-year-old male resident of Shadra who presented to our OPD on 15th of May 2024 with the complaint of decrease in vision in both eyes, right more than left, since 1 year. Progressively worsening since 1 year and associated with on and off redness since 1.5 years, with no aggravating and relieving factors. The ocular history was unremarkable. Patient had history of occasional knee joint pain, back ache, and rashes, and there was no history of oral or genital ulcers, chronic diarrhea, or cough. Patient was on vitamin supplementation. He had history of skin allergy, and he was born to consanguineous parents He had one brother and one sister, none of whom had similar complaints. There was history of preterm C-section birth in the mother, and vaccination was complete according to EPI. Developmental milestones were delayed till 2.5 years of age, but after that, patient has speech, hearing, and gait normal right now. Patient belongs to lower socioeconomic class. Ocular examination on first visit revealed best corrected visual acuity of hand movements in the right eye and 6/16 in the left eye. There was diffuse conjunctival congestion in both eyes and band-shaped keratopathy measuring 9/3 mm in the right eye and 8/3 mm in the left eye, covering the visual axis. Details of the anterior chamber, lens, pupil, and fundus were not visible because of band keratopathy. Systemic examination was within normal limits. The limb, joint, oral, and lymph node examination was normal. So B-scan was done because of band keratopathy, which revealed high vitreous echoes in both eyes, indicative of vitritis. For that, a surgical plan of bilateral chelation with 2% ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid under general anesthesia was devised to restore the visual acuity, to examine anterior and posterior segment, and to explore the etiology of the band keratopathy. Commercially, EDTA is prepared by dissolving 11.7 grams of EDTA in 800 ml of distilled water, and the pH is adjusted to 8 with sodium hydroxide. But we prepared EDTA in our own operation theater with the help of CBC vials and sterile cotton-tipped applicator. First of all, one CBC vial is taken which contains 5.4 milligram of EDTA. 4 vials contains 21.6 milligram of EDTA. This volume is dissolved in 1 ml of normal saline, and then this creates a 2% solution of EDTA which is used for chelation. The steps of the chelation include deepithelization of the cornea with a 15-number blade. Then a microsponge soaked in 2% EDTA is placed on the deepithelized cornea, and then it is scraped thoroughly to remove the calcium deposits. After that, the cornea is rinsed thoroughly with normal saline, and bandaged contact lens is applied. This is the picture of our patient pre-chelation and post-chelation. Ocular examination post-chelation revealed a best corrected visual acuity of 636 in right eye and 618 in the left eye. There was bilateral AC cells and flare and irregular pupil with posterior synex. Bilateral cataract more in the right eye, bilateral vitreous haze, and IOP of 13 mm mercury in the right eye and 14 mm mercury in the left eye, all indicative of uveitis. So systemic investigations were ordered, including CBC, ESR, CRP, ANA-RA factor, chest X-ray, quantiferon, gold TB, and serum ACE, of which ESR was raised, ANA and RA factor were within normal limit. Chest X-ray was also normal. So the most probable cause of band keratopathy in this case was chronic uveitis of unknown etiology till now. Topical treatment including fortified topical steroid, cycloplegic, and NSAID eye drops was started. Further investigations are still awaited. Our main goal is to find out the etiology of uveitis and to achieve a quiet eye so that cataract extraction can be carried out to restore visual acuity once the eye is quiet. Take-home message is that mostly an eye which may seem quiet might not be so quiet after all. So chelation is a sight-saving procedure in such cases, and underlying cause should be sought to prevent recurrence. Stockermans conducted a research in 2017 which concluded that more than 95% of cases undergoing chelation with 2% EDTA achieve symptomatic relief, and the band keratopathy involving the central cornea and posterior segment does not have a good visual prognosis. Thank you. Any questions? Mostly it is around 28 to 30%. For that, we have to treat the underlying cause, and mostly we have to do the chelation again in such cases. There are systemic causes and ocular causes. In systemic causes, sarcoidosis, hypercalcemia, chronic renal failure, And in ocular causes, as we have discussed, long-standing uveitis, siliconized eye, and other systemic diseases can have ocular manifestations as well.
I call upon Abdul Fateh for his presentation on clinical presentation of carotid cavernous fistula and outcomes of endovascular balloon embolization.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Abdul Fateh, second year resident from Lahore General Hospital. Today my topic of presentation is outcomes of endovascular balloon embolization in carotid cavernous fistula. There was no conflict of interest in our study. Introduction. Basically, it is an abnormal connection between the internal carotid artery and the cavernous sinuses, which results in high arterial and low arterial pressure and high venous perfusion. And clinically, it manifests as hypoxia, inflammation, and edema of the ocular tissue and orbital tissue. And there are certain modalities to confirm the fistula. There could be CT scan, CT, angio, MRI, but the gold standard for diagnosing the carotid cavernous fistula is digital subtraction angiography. And it should be done before any potential interventions. The objective of our study was to elucidate the clinical presentation and assess the outcome of balloon embolization in carotid cavernous fistula. In our study, it was a retrospective case series, and it took place from 2019 to 22 at Lahore General Hospital. And the sample size was 18 patients who presented to us, and the data which was included was clinical presentation, the diagnostic techniques, the intervention, and 2-month follow-up was done. Method. After digital subtraction angiography, endoarterial balloon embolization was done through femoral artery approach. As you can see that this is the balloon being placed at the place of fistula, and there's another method of doing the coiling inside of the balloon. So the clinical findings in our patients, 100% of our patients had proptosis, and more than 90% of the patients had engorged conjunctival vessels. The less likely clinical findings were chemosis and dystopia of the affected site. And among the 18 patients, 16 of our patients had direct carotid cavernous fistula. The mean age of presentation was 27 years, and almost all the patients had history of trauma around 7 months back. And the female to male ratio was 1:8, and 15 of the patients successfully underwent endovascular embolization, and one of the patients during the procedure developed epidural hematoma, which was drained later on. In this slide, you can see that the pre-op and post-op visual acuity was almost the same in all the patients. There was not much significance difference in the visuality pre-embolization and post-embolization. As you can see, this is the contrast enhanced pre-op embolization, and after embolization you can see that the fistula is closed. This is the video. As you can see that this is the fistula that after dye injection, this one, and this is the post embolization. As you can see, the balloon is in place and the fistula is closed. Okay, the strengths of study. As we know that we are a developing country, and this study could provide us the different techniques and facilities that can be done for the patient who present with carotid cavernous fistula. The limitations, it was a retrospective study and the follow-up time was only of 2 months and the sample size was small. But given the presentation of CCF, it was acceptable. Future directions, we need more randomized and controlled trials to assess the efficacy and safety of different treatment modalities. Conclusion, femoral artery balloon embolization is an efficient technique for both direct and indirect carotid cavernous fistula. These are the references. And this article was published in Turkish Journal of Ophthalmology in June 2024. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions open.
In this, basically, it's a radiological intervention in which a dye is injected through an arterial approach, and the images are taken using X-rays.
What was your sample size
Total 18 patients were included in our sample size.
and what were the complications?
One patient developed epidural hematoma during the intervention, and which was drained later on.
Okay, what are the pre-operative prerequisites which you take or precautions you take before injecting?
Injecting the dye,
Yeah.
we checked any history of allergies and the renal function test of the patients before undergoing the intervention.
What are the serious complications which can occur?
Patient could have anaphylactic shock and it could develop acute kidney injury due to the dye of the.
Any other question? Okay, thank you very much. Any presenter, Dr. Ikra Khalid, is she present? Yes. Dr. Aisha Arif. She will be presenting her talk on post-keratoplasty astigmatism management by limbal relaxing incision using diamond knife.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Aisha Arif, 4th year PGR from LRBD Lahore. The topic which I'm going to present is post-PKP astigmatism management by limbal relaxing incision using diamond knife. This study aims to analyze the effectiveness of limbal relaxing incisions using diamond knife to decrease astigmatism in post-penetrating keratoplasty patients. The principle of relaxing incisions is to flatten the steep corneal meridian using 1 or 2 incisions. So it was a case series which was done at LRBT Township, Lahore. Post-keratoplasty patients presenting in the OPD having high astigmatism were chosen. Best corrected visual acuity, autorefraction, and corneal topography by Oculus Pentacam were performed. Limbal relaxing incision at steep axis was given using diamond knife under topical anesthesia. BCVA, autorefraction, and corneal topography were repeated 1 week after the procedure. So this was the first case. We had this patient 21 years age who presented to us with a complaint of decrease of vision. He had history of right PKP 5 years ago and removal of sutures was done 2 years ago. Corneal topography showed K1 of 45.6, K2 51.4 and K max 67.4. The procedure was performed. The minimum corneal thickness in the steep meridian was 515 microns. So arcuate keratotomy was done at steep axis from 12 to 4 o'clock at a depth of 400 microns, which made a depth of 77.6%. It was done on the graft 1 millimeter central to the graft host junction. These were the results of arcuate keratotomy. The first image shows the corneal topography before procedure, which showed the steep axis from 12 to 5 o'clock, and the second image shows the corneal topography which was done after the procedure, which showed improvement in the steep axis. Visual acuity before the procedure was 660, which was improved to 636, and autorefraction was -4 at 90 degrees, which was improved to plus 0.75. Keratometry readings were improved, K1 from 45.6 to 43.4, K2 from 51.4 to 47.6, and K max from 67.4 to 59.6.
This was the case 2, which was the patient was 16 years old, which presented to us with a complaint of decrease of vision. History of left PKP was done 8 years ago and ROS was done 5 years ago. Corneal topography showed K1 of 43.5, K2 of 50.6, and Kmax of 58.2. In this case, the corneal thickness in the steep meridian, minimum corneal thickness was 558, and steep axis was 5 to 7 o'clock. We made arcuate keratotomy at the depth of 400 microns, and it was 72%. The improvement of corneal topography from the steep axis from 5 to 7 o'clock, which was improved postoperatively. Visual acuity was improved from 618 to 612, and auto-refraction was improved from minus 5.5 at 120 degrees, which was improved to minus 3 at 125 degrees. Keratometry readings were improved, which you can see here. Another case, 18 years old, male patient who presented to us with a complaint of decrease of vision. He had history of left PKP 7 years ago. ROS was done 4 years ago. In this case, the minimum corneal thickness was 506 microns. We did arcuate keratotomy at steep axis from 6 to 11 o'clock at a depth of 400 microns. It was 79% depth. You can see the steep axis from 6 to 11 o'clock, which was improved after the procedure. Visual acuity was improved from 624 to 612, and auto-refraction was improved from minus 5.5 to minus 3. Keratometry readings were improved from 47.3 to 45.7 K1. K2 was improved from 55 to 51.2, and Kmax from 64.8 to 58.1. This is the arc shape incision, which was made from 6 to 11 o'clock. This was the diamond knife which was used for the procedure. This was the procedure. Diamond knife cleanly cuts the cornea. The overlying epithelium remains intact and the underlying stroma is cleanly separated. This shows the calibrations, which we choose according to the minimum depth in the area in which we are going to make the incision. So in this case, we chose 400 microns. An arc-shape incision was made 1 millimeter inside the graft host junction onto the graft from 9 to 11 o'clock, which was the steep axis in this case. So the results of our procedure the results were taken after 1 week. The results were visual acuity improvement of 1 or 2 Snellen lines, improvement of an average of 2 diopters astigmatism by autorefraction, and decrease in corneal power at steep axis on corneal topography. So we concluded this as LRI is a practical, safe, simple, and effective method to reduce astigmatism in post-keratoplasty patients. It produces minimal surface disruption and yields rapid visual recovery. LRI can be considered safe and effective for correcting astigmatism of up to 2.5 diopters. Thank you. Sir, in those cases in which the corneal thickness is very thin or there is no appropriate surface available for giving the incision.
But you can reduce the size of that to 200 micron
or sir, in those cases in which the irregular astigmatism is very much, so you cannot give relaxing incisions in more than one places or greater places.
Okay, you are not giving full thickness incision. It is the partial.
It's a partial thickness incision. Sir, it says that you can give incision at a depth of 70 to 80% for effective results. Sorry. Sir, the incision, the more closer the incision to the visual axis, the more longer the incision, and the more depth causes better results. But in our case, it was done in post-keratoplasty patients, so we did it at 1 millimeter inside the graft host junction onto the graft
Steep axis.
at steep axis.
1 millimeter from the
So we did it on post-keratoplasty patients,
inside just 1 millimeter.
1 millimeter inside the graft host junction.
I will now call upon Dr. Shahidullah for his talk on surgical outcome following frontalis sling using silicone tube and silicone sleeve.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am Dr. Shahidullah, PGR Ophthalmology, Eye Unit in the hospital. I want to present the surgical outcome following frontalis lens using PCR silicone tube and silicone sleeve. As we know, frontalis suspension is the treatment of choice for severe ptosis with poor levator function, and we have many several materials for this, like fascia lata, sutures, and silicone rod, silicone sleeves. And the purpose of my study is to determine the surgical outcome of frontalis sling in patient with severe ptosis having poor levator function using DCR silicone tube with silicone sleeve. My study design is interventional quasi-experimental study, and my setting of study was Institute of Ophthalmology, Eye Unitary, New Hospital, Lahore. And duration was about 12 months. Sample size about 30 eyes of 28 patients, and sampling technique was purposive sampling. Inclusion criteria, we had include patients with either gender of any age with severe ptosis having poor levator function. We have excluded patients with Marcus Gunn jaw phenomenon, previous history of failed ptosis surgery, and poor Bell's phenomenon. Procedure was as a conventional box pentagon sling surgery. We used DCR silicone tube with sleeve, as we can see in this picture. After suturing the silicone tube to the dorsal plate and passing to the forehead as pentagon, we use a silicone sleeve also to reduce the slippage chances. The result of my study was total cases was 30, and mean age was according to demographic variables 25 plus minus 1.2 years, and the laterality was 27% was right eye, and 60% was left eye ptosis, and 30% was bilateral. According to etiology, congenital was most of the patient was has congenital ptosis, and one patient had because of trauma and chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia. Also, we had a patient. Our surgical outcome was we had measured MRD1 and palpebral fissure height. Mean pre-op MRD1 was minus 0.9 plus minus 0.12 mm, and mean post-op was 3.4 plus minus 0.04 mm, and mean change was 4.3 plus minus 0.1 mm, And according to palpebral fissure height, mean pre-op was 4.7 plus minus 0.7 mm. Mean post-op was 8.1 plus minus uh, uh, 0.3 mm. And the mean change was 3.4 plus minus 0.2 mm. According to anatomical and functional success rate, success rate was about 90%, and functionally it was about 88 to 89%, as we had lag of Telmus also in patients. In complications, we had about 6.6% undercorrected, and that they need readjustment of the surgery, and 30% had lag of Telmus, and about 6.6%, two patients had suture site infection because poor hygiene of the patients. Here we have some pictures. 21 years female with congenital ptosis, pre-op and post-op pictures we can see. This was a CPU patient, bilateral ptosis, and this is a 11-year female with congenital ptosis. We had used the silicone tube and silicone sleeves. In conclusion, we can say DCR silicone tube with silicone sleeve is an effective option for management of severe ptosis with poor levator function. Also, DCR tube and DCR sling having good anatomical and functional outcome with low complication rate. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. What is the advantage of using silicone tube and sleeve over this silicone band?
Sir,
Or facial atta?
silicone DCR silicone tube easily available and cheaper. It is cheaper than silicone rod. That's why we use it.
And what is the long-term results? What are the results up to?
Sir, we have patients follow up about 1.5 years. अभी तक सर हमने कोई complication कुछ नहीं है. It had good outcome. It's Prolene suture. Prolene suture, it has a complication of infection or reaction दोनों कर सकते हैं, लेकिन silicone tube में हम अभी तक नहीं देखे reaction.
Sir, I've been teaching for the last almost 30 years now, and mostly I've taught in G sir at round about in 2000 में start किया था, 25 years ago, and it is a great honor for me that I've taught around about 17-18 years in KE, and then the rest of the colleges, SIMS and FJ, and also services in Amritsar. And now what I have seen over the years that the future में जैसे changes आती हैं, it is for the betterment. First, we used to the residents used to read the books and they learn. Now they read the laptops and the mobiles on them. They are getting the education, and somehow it's becoming. I think eyes के लिए थोड़ा ज़्यादा difficult हो गया है क्योंकि छोटा font में ये देखते हैं, लेकिन knowledge wise they are not पीछे नहीं है. They are on क्योंकि future is for the betterment होता है. और I think that the young residents are becoming more knowledgeable, और उनके पास knowledge का अब जो है बहुत ज़्यादा है कि जहाँ मर्जी से they can Google it, they can chat GPT, whatever they want, they can. And बस एक चीज़ की थोड़ी सी कमी है कि जो कई दफ़ा जो रिस्पेक्ट का एलिमेंट जो पहले होता था वो थोड़ा सा शायद कम हो गया, और बाकी एवरीथिंग इज गोइंग फाइन.